Welcome to House Business, where we give you business ideas on the house. I'm your host, Mark.
And I'm your host, Nicole.
And each week, we'll pitch a new idea. We'll give you some considerations, and we'll debate whether it's a good idea or not. And this week, Nicole is pitching.
And my idea is bag check.
This right here feel like money. This right here feel like money. Ooh. Money moves. Ooh. Money moves. Ooh. This right here feel like money. This right here feel like money. Ooh.
So, bag
check. Bag check for those in the northern region. I heard
I
it.
didn't even think about my
instantly.
Strong A when I said bag check, but we can.
It's bag and it's Vegas. Vegas is tough for you.
For the listener, you've probably picked up on this now because we've had enough episodes that you know how I talk at this point. But living on the border of Wisconsin and Illinois, I feel like I have somewhat of a strong Chicago/Wisconsin A, if you will. And so bag, or our favorite one is Vegas. Las Vegas,
for those trying to pay attention.
Shout out
the city of Las Vegas.
The city of Las Vegas.
Shout out Las Vegas.
We would love if you would call and send me and Mark out to visit for free. We'll take that.
I don't know if an entire city can call us, Nicole.
Well, what if we had the key to Las Vegas? Maybe whoever's hearing this, I'm stretching here, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm going to go. You can go wherever you're talking about. I'm going to go to Las Vegas is where I'm going to go.
Well, I'll see you in Vegas. So okay. We'll do both. So my idea, bag check, got me thinking about questions to ask you. And with taglines for today's idea, which we'll get into, I was really thinking of the idea that everybody has baggage. There's that A again, some baggage with them. And I was curious, Mark, what you think maybe some fun baggage you have is, or small red flags. And so I'll start with a little story of my own that has to do with baggage. I have mentioned it on this podcast before, actually in the last episode about the dot, that I tend to lose my bags or luggage more than the average person. I would argue I have to file a significant amount of complaints with airlines. And, I think it's probably the frequency in which I travel. But your dot idea or concept that we talked about in last week's episode would have been really helpful for me. I was traveling. I was kind of a road warrior the last few days. And I left my wallet, everything I had, credit cards, ID, at a grocery store in Davenport, Iowa, and did not realize it until I had to cross a toll bridge and then check into my hotel hours away for the night. And I was like, oh my gosh.
No.
Hey, I wish I had this dot feature, which would have been great because completely it was left, hands full, didn't think about it. The hotel was great because, a lot of times you can't even check in without identification. They kind of let me do it all with the app. And here I am, everything was fine. Found the wallet, got it all back, but it just added some stress. And so one of my I don't know, I said, fun things that just tends to follow me around is I have lost my bags with the airline. Even I didn't even check my bags one time. I took it onto me with the plane, put it in the overhead bin, and somehow the flight attendants moved it around and it got lost and I had to file a claim to get it back. I will lose awful. My bags. I know. All the time. And I was just kind of giggling about that today with even something, my wallet, that was kind of a self-inflicted one that I did myself. But that's just something that I would say follows me a little bit as some slight fun baggage that I have. So
you're saying you're saying baggage, physical baggage that you're leaving behind, or are we talking about
I was thinking
flaws?
More character flaws. I would say leaving my wallet, probably a character flaw that I was not paying attention, holding my coffee and everything else. So yeah, I was just curious, what comes to mind for you?
Procrastination is a very real problem that I face in my life. And I will put off planning things and I'll put off booking things until the last minute. And I always get stung with it being more expensive than it should have been if I planned. Ooh. So yeah, not as fun as your story, but
Yeah, that's not good. I mean,
that's my little baggage.
I think sometimes with putting that off though, there is a fine line of Can you find a better deal? Can you not? But yeah, I've been burned with that in the past too, which can be a bummer.
I can tell you that I never end up finding a better deal because I don't do any more research. I'm
You're just like, this is what it is.
I'm in my head. I'm like, let's just take a flight, for example. I'm like, yeah, the prices will go down closer to the date, which makes literally no sense at all. But I think it every single time. And I'm like, the flight's next week. I can do it.
Yeah. I can fall into that as well. So, all right. Well, if any listeners have some good baggage that they want to write in about, we'll take it. I'm not meaning like any serious stuff. Like, don't hit us with your serious problems. But I just think like little fun, quirky things that.
Yeah, like you spill too much. That's another one for me. I spill a lot. I hit my cups over all the time. Totally
you hit
sober.
Your cups. Do you spill like on yourself, or is it more like you're spilling your cups everywhere?
No, sometimes it's like in the middle of storytelling, and I go with my hands quite a bit,
animated,
and
talking.
I will just either get out and about, and then I'll just smack the water or whatever I'm drinking over. So I've done that actually quite often.
Okay, well, I'd be curious if for the listener if that'll ever happen while we're recording, but. So far you're good. So
far I keep all my drinks far away from my desk at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't
okay.
run
well, I guess with recording these episodes, like that's something you can't procrastinate. So there you go. You're already working on that.
Yes.
And you've yet to spill, and I've yet to lose. I guess anything that I'm using. Yeah, my wallet.
You've yet to lose your wallet on this podcast. Good for you. Shout out wallets, and shout out Nicole not losing her wallet.
Right. So. I guess, okay, so my idea today is actually so incredibly simple. It is probably my most basic idea I think I've had so far. Mm-hmm. So it's a concept that already exists, but I would like to present it to the listener as something that should be brought to the United States a little bit more frequently. So as I've shared, we've talked about, I recently got back from Japan. And one of the things that it was everywhere in Japan. Every single restaurant, every single place we went into, there was, when you would sit down at the restaurant, the servers would point to or show you that underneath your chair, there was a bin, a box, or, sometimes it was collapsible. Anyways, a container that was meant to hold your belongings. And so, for example, for me, it was my purse, could be whatever I was carrying, bags from the store. But these bins were under every single chair, every single time. And looking into it, it's actually a part of certain cultures with like feng shui. They believe that, there's a saying like when money touches the floor, you're losing money. And so the idea is like, it's bad luck to put your purse on the floor. Now, this is not just in Japan, not just in Asia. Looking into it a little bit more, it's, other cultures as well around the world believe this. For one, it keeps everything clean, keeps it compact. And then also it does save space because these bins are kind of just right next to you, where oftentimes in the US or at least in the Midwest, you're oftentimes putting your bag on the table where you're eating, or you're putting it like on a seat at the restaurant. So it's also like freeing up space. So I have 3 different ways of pitching this that someone could start a business with this concept, but just kind of let this land and let this sit for a second. For right now, this is my baggage check idea, is a way to hold your baggage in a clean environment that is kind of a hospitality reach out from the establishment or restaurant that you're going to.
Okay. All right. Let me sit with it for a second. Let me think.
Yeah.
I think the first questions I have to come to mind is, let's talk through the exact use of it one more time.
Yep.
So what exactly are we using this for? What do you expect people to use this for? And we'll get into who we're selling to later. But let's say bare bones, what items are going in this bin, or what things could fit in this bin? Because I don't exactly have a reference of size. So give me kind of a reference of size and we'll go from there.
So I saw it done multiple different ways, which is what I think is really interesting about this business idea. Is I don't think there's just one way to do it. And that's where I would like to get into the 3 different avenues you could take this if you're listening to this episode today. And I think it's something you could take and you could start tomorrow if you wanted. These bins, so the first place I went to, it looked similar to like a shower caddy, if you will, or like a beach tote. So it was, it was plastic. They were sitting next to every single chair at the restaurant. And it was just very common. Like, again, every single seat at the restaurant had this bin next to the chair. I then went to another restaurant where they were fabric and they were collapsible, which would be probably the model that I thought looked like the chicest. It was sleek. You really didn't notice it. It was a higher end bar that I went into, that you could pull this out. And so it wasn't taking up space. It was just kind of resting on the stool underneath your chair, or like the legs of the chair. And then I also saw it again in like another cheaper format where it was like a cloth basket. So the way these looked, just imagine, you could picture it any way. It could be wicker, fabric, plastic. They're just baskets with the chairs. And this is, I think, similar in the US. Like, we don't see the baskets, but it would be similar to like going to a bar and there's like nothing more exciting than like you're sitting at the bar and there's a hook under the bar for like your purse or your belongings. That can be few and far between, but the concept of the basket is literally to put anything you are carrying into that restaurant into the basket. So for women, it's going to be your purse. It could be things like a diaper bag or shopping bags. I saw a lot of umbrellas as well. Like over in Japan, they were using umbrellas more frequently for the shade than we tend to use over here, as well as for the rain. But really, it's just like to keep your belongings like with you in a clean environment that's kind of put together and not all over the place.
Okay. I'm going to push you on the clean thing for just a moment and tell me what you think about this. Did these bins get changed out in between new customers, or did you notice that they were just kind of there already? And if they are cleaned or not, or if they're changed out at the same rate of, like, let's say dishes or something, because people might put things with mud in them and all other kinds of stuff. Was it changed before you got in there, or do you not know?
That I do not know. I mean, they all looked clean. So I guess when I'm saying clean, I think of it more or less as like people aren't stepping in it, like your shoes aren't in it, you're not tracking. So I think you're right. Like there could be mud, there could be things falling out of your purse, but it's not like food spilling from the restaurant into these. They'd be easy to wipe out, easy to clean up, versus like the floor just tracking more dirt.
The reason I ask that is I'm sort of imagining it in the bar setting of how you'd pitch it here. And in my mind, the more things go in there, the more of a burden it could be on the restaurant.
I think that's a really fair question. Depending like what fabric or material, I think that's something really great to call out, because it's like, one, if it's fabric, are you washing them? Are you vacuuming them?
Yeah.
That was good. Or are you like wiping them out with a rag? I think like that would be up for, whoever takes this product to run with it. But I think that's a really good call out, and similar con of like, you'd have to clean this similar to anything else like in the establishment.
Okay. I want to hear a little bit more about how, because like you said, it's more simple idea, very easy to understand. I think the hard thing is going to be, how do you sell this? I would love to hear the different ideas you have.
The three pitches I have. Okay.
Hit me with the pitches.
So I think with this idea, like it's an idea that exists, as we're saying, and it's just culturally, like, how do you change, with any big new idea, the belief, like as an entrepreneur or a new business, that like people need this, right? And so I think you could take this idea 3 different ways. One, when I first initially thought of this idea, I thought of like, I now own this company, for example, called Baggage. Now I even forget what I called it, but like the Bag Check area, Bag Check. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder of my own product name. Let's say you own this company, you call it Bag Check, and you are taking the products, you are literally going restaurants to restaurants, selling this concept, selling this idea, and selling it as like, hey, this is a great level of hospitality, something that's different that you could offer your customers, potentially getting in with like chain restaurants or bigger restaurant groups. Could be smaller, could be establishments that are looking to like be a little bit more high scale and say that you're offering stuff. But you could approach this as, hey, Nicole has a really great idea. I'm going to go home. I'm going to find the types of bins. I'm going to actually look at different types of materials that I want to use or bins I want to use, and I'm going to sell this product. One, that would be the first idea. The second idea, as I thought about this a little bit more, would be for someone that already owns the restaurants or restaurant chains or already in hospitality that's like looking for another way to maybe change up the atmosphere of an establishment they already have. I'm thinking of a franchise where it's like you have a variety of locations where you can introduce this concept, kind of see how it takes off as something to the customers, just integrating it into what you already do. Or the third option I thought of was you could do this as any business So we'll use House of Heidi. That's our great business that we're able
Shout
to
out House of Heidi.
Shout out House of Heidi. Talk about kind of, you could use this for any business as an advertisement. So maybe I'm going to slap House of Heidi on all of these, approach a bar and say, hey, what do you think of like me putting my logo in here for 1 month? Let's test this out with your customers. And honestly, kind of using it as like a really cool like advertisement feature where the product itself it's not really the product, but you're like more or less using it to draw attention to something new and creative for a business you already have. So again, that's a little bit different than some of the pitches we typically talk about. But as I thought about how you could maybe take this and run with it, those were the 3 different areas I saw. And I'm curious like what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think the first question that comes to mind is incentive structure. We can sort of break them down. I have similar comments for all of them, except for maybe the last one. We'll get to that one. But for the first 2, let's say I'm selling this to businesses. My first question is going to be what exactly are we selling them? Is it the idea of putting the baskets separately, having created a distinct type of basket to sell, which it kind of sounds like in that idea, you would have sort of a product that you're actually selling. And I think my pushback on that would be, what's to stop them from just kind of adopting this service anyways? And right. How, if you're selling this, I don't think that that's patentable, at least from what we know. So I think that's a hard pitch to sell, at least from going door to door. I think you've got a little bit sort of better for the second one. If you already own these places, how do you differentiate yourself from other places? Because this might be a net loss in terms of product, because you're buying bins to put under,
yep.
And designing this bin for yourself. But what you might lose in cost of the bins, you might make up in clientele that might prefer this service to next door, which doesn't have this kind of convenience. And I guess I'll stop there and ask you the question. Do you think that this might be enough to drive customers from the place next door, foot traffic into the restaurant, to make up for the cost of making these bins? How low cost are we talking for these bins is a little half question to that.
I think if you're the restaurant bringing it in, it's a very low cost. I mean, the ones I saw were, I would say anywhere in the neighborhood of like 50 cents to maybe a couple dollars, like depending how much you would scale up. Like this is a product that is going to cost you, I mean, if you're getting up to the $10 range, I think you're overthinking it. I think you can get nice enough bins, baskets, however you want to do this. You definitely want it to fit the aesthetic of like the restaurant. And like I said, the nicest one was the one where you didn't really notice and they were collapsible.
Yeah.
To your question of like, is it enough to drive clientele or like people coming in the doors? I think that's a great question. I've been offered in the Chicago area, or in suburbs actually, which is interesting, not as much downtown. But I've oftentimes had where servers will kind of bring over like a coat rack to a table, or it's more of like the server that's offering this extra like, whoa, like, don't put your bag down. It's kind of taking me off guard, giving me kind of like a purse rack to put my stuff on. Now, when I'm saying this has caught me off guard is like, this is where I think maybe the opportunity is that it is like such an extra touch of hospitality that at least in the Midwest, I don't want to say like all over the United States, but most places, and I've been a lot, are like, it's not something that you see offered. And so when it did happen to me the one time, it stopped me in my tracks. It was like then a very like great experience with the server, great experience at the restaurant. It felt more classy, you felt more taken care of. So I do think like if you're a restaurant, it shows that you're like paying attention to who your clientele is, being women coming in with handbags, caring about their stuff, or anyone with handbags for that matter. So I see where you're coming from. Like, I don't know how much the product's going to drive, but I do think it's one of those like attentions to detail that I love, that it would, like, I'm still talking about this restaurant that I went to in Des Plaines, Illinois, that did that. So I do just think, over in Japan, in Tokyo, for example, where it's happening all the time, that's where it really was for me more of like a light bulb moment of, this is super great. I would love if this happened everywhere, versus like the piling up of your stuff and trying to figure out like where to go. I think there's a lot of times where you're kind of going into a bar or restaurant where you don't want your stuff on the ground and you're kind of like stuck holding it, sitting on it, trying to decide what to do with it.
That's a good point.
As a business, I think it shows that you're like listening to your clients and again, being people coming to your restaurant when I say the word clients, but it's just, I think, an extra layer of caring about it.
You made a really good point at the end that I want to kind of roll into because I want to talk about your third idea. And I put that separate in my first kind of comments for a reason, because I think that with the way that I'm sort of hearing how we're talking about this, you could split this into two different types of clientele. And I don't mean just selling the bin. I mean, like there's sort of a high value version in which you're enhancing the already, pleasant or kind of higher class dining experience. And like you said, in the places that you've been, you're still talking about it. And wow, what a luxury, what a convenience. I'm assuming it was a sort of nicer restaurant, correct me if I'm
it
wrong.
was a nice restaurant, but it was like, honestly, it was a restaurant in our hotel that, again, like I think is shocking that, I've been very nice places downtown Chicago where you would think would maybe offer more of this service that don't. And then it was like, and I think it probably was, just something the server is used to doing from maybe other experiences they've had. I'm not sure.
Right.
But again, it was in a place that I was not expecting it. And it's had me thinking about it ever since.
All right. So I want to kind of get your perspective on this part of it then, because let's lump that kind of into higher class dining because it's a classier move. It might invoke a sense of a classier place. And then you could argue that maybe that brings in more clientele and it raises prices and you can sell higher luxury items. Okay. That's kind of like the one bucket. But the other bucket that I like personally rather than from a business perspective, which, we can talk about that. But you mentioned going into a crowded bar and you either have to hold your stuff or the hooks are all taken. There's nowhere to put your stuff, especially a purse or let's say a coat for let's say it's wintertime and those coats can be expensive. There's really nothing you can do with them necessarily if everything on the bar and you don't want to hold them. But I really like the idea of, you mentioned advertisers as an opportunity for a bar. I'm imagining a dive bar here or like on sort of a lower, more kind of normal place to go into that's going to be crowded. I really like the idea of having advertisers as extra advertising space, maybe local businesses, maybe bigger businesses. And that way, as the dive bar owner in this case, I'd be like, well, this is sort of a win-win for me because I've got advertisers paying the cost of the bins. I can put multiple on there. There's a restaurant around where I live where they put a bunch of advertisers on the top of the table. Now it's like sort of like a normal mom and pop breakfast place. And you don't go in there and think like, why would this be on there? It's just kind of like a whatever thing. But I think about that idea kind of is the same where I'm like, you could pay off how much just from advertiser space. And it doesn't really affect or hurt anybody. And I've never walked out of a place because I've seen advertisements in a bar.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it sort of adds to the aesthetic.
I agree. And, when I first was thinking of this idea, it's funny, like going all the way over to Tokyo where I thought I was going to have all these great ideas for this podcast. And that's like what I came home
she got a box.
spinning on, like honestly, like spinning on for the last 2 weeks. And I kept thinking like, it's just like trying to introduce something that people don't know they need, which I think is half of new business ideas. It's half of being an entrepreneur is like trying to convince people they need something that they don't yet know about. And so I was really spinning on, like, to your point, you've made some great arguments against it. Like, you've still got to clean it. What does this look like? It's overhead. And I think that was where the idea of like, okay, what if it's really not about the product so much? Because I agree, like, I don't know how much money you are going to make on these bins.
Yeah.
I do just think it's like adding an extra layer of the detail. And that's where I pivoted to this idea of maybe it is a piece of advertisement similar to you're handing out mugs or you're handing out, I think of like golf tees, merchandise. Yeah. It's something, to your point, like it's at the bar, it's subtle, but again, it's enough that you walk in and you're like, oh, this is different. Like, I'm remembering that someone cared enough to put these bins here. What is this? What is this? Like, what is this House of Heidi logo on here? I think maybe the own argument I'm going to make to that is like, how do you still kind of go in and talk the restaurant into saying like, hey, I've got 50 bins with my logo on it. Let's try it for 1 month. I think you could do that. I think it's something worth testing, but that was maybe like the hang up of like, okay, you still then got to sell. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm thinking about this from the perspective of the bar owner or the client here. Okay. It's like from their shoes, the argument could be made to me of like, this is additional advertising space that would pay for itself were you to get advertisers. So I think if I'm a bar owner and I'm like, say my walls are full of the aesthetic that I want, or the tables, like I mentioned, those are full, or let's say merchandise is expensive and there's not a lot of return. I might see that as an opportunity to say, like, I could put a company that is interested on each end of the box, on each wall of the box. And let's say I can set those prices to account for the cost of the bin. If I'm buying it from Marc and Nicole Inc. or whatever, I could factor it in to say like, yeah, and this is also going to this is going to go towards drinks this month or rent or however it's broken down. But there could be an additional charge to say like, look how many people come into our bar. Look how many people use these bins. Look how many people are looking at these bins. I think you might actually be able to sell it better from that point of saying like, look how much foot traffic I already get. So it's sort of counter to the point before where it's a way to bring in additional customers. And I'm leaning towards the advertiser idea because the cost is low, but the upside is pretty much free as long as you can get advertisers.
So I think just to clarify, Marc is talking about, you were talking about the idea of the bar owner getting money from advertisers on the bin. I was talking a little bit about, and I like that idea. I think just two different ideas. The concept of the brand, let's say a far out there brand, Marc and Nicole Inc., bringing these bins in as like, hey, this just has our logo. Let's see who will take them. So I think there's like two different ways. Marc, I like your idea because it's like the bar owner, again, the flaw in mine was, how are you getting the bar to put these bins in all of a sudden? Right. But if the bar owner is making the profit, you're right. Like there's going to be a little bit of a upside, probably not huge, but a little bit of an upside there. So,
but it's a lower cost. So,
right.
You know what I mean?
Okay. No, I like it. I think that was like a good spin. I just wanted to clarify. I think there's two different types of advertising here that you could do.
I'm sort of flipping back and forth between how would I imagine a customer, which the customers are going to be restaurants. I think I have trouble seeing how you would make money on the first idea that we had of putting it in the restaurant, like suggesting it to restaurants that are higher class. I don't know how me taking this idea today would be able to make any money from that avenue of it, because I don't really have much of a pitch as far as from what I can see is like it's a lot harder, I think, to say to a higher class restaurant, you know how you've been profitable up until now and you guys sell really expensive steaks? Why don't you put our boxes under your tables and then maybe more people will come in? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think while it's a fair suggestion to a restaurant and maybe you adopt it and there is convenience to it, if I'm trying to make money on it, I need to know exactly why I'm selling this to a customer or a dive bar owner. That's the best thing that I can think to sell it to is like, there's a lot of in and out and foot traffic. People don't sit very long. People come in, they're out, they get a drink, they put their stuff down for 10 minutes. Sometimes.
Yep.
Some people, I'm not going to name names, we sit there for a while. Who's to say?
Never know.
But yeah, what I would want and why I would sell that is I want more eyes on it and more feet looking near it. And that's the best thing that I can think of. Is there a better way to do that? Or
I don't know that I have a better way. I went to I think it's still with this idea, like you have to match the aesthetic to the establishment as well. Right. So like the point you're making of, if you have this high-end steakhouse and you go in with this 50-cent basket, I gave that example, like that's not going to work. Like it's got to kind of fit in the seats, be like a subtle little extra bit of like a touch on the experience. It can't take up any part of the experience. So I agree with that. I think like my favorite pivot is probably the bar owner being able to sell the advertisements. But again, it's like, you'd have to figure out like, how does that look? How is it aesthetically pleasing? And I think that's for whoever takes this idea on. But I think the point here is like, there's a lot of different avenues that you could take with this concept that I think over time could be successful. And it seems weird, but like, depending what type of, business you would be building, it could be like a gateway into other products.
So let me ask you, Nicole, what what do you think is the like relative skill level that somebody might need to create one of these boxes? Like I said, I have no frame of reference for what these look like, so I'm totally going off of your description and like my imagination.
Well, I think the part of this idea where I'm like, this is probably the most basic idea I've had yet. As we know, a lot of mine are like very like, you got to figure out all the technology and the science. But I think you go out and buy the baskets. Like, I think you go out, like, I mean, honestly, like tonight I could go to the Dollar Tree. I could go to Target. I think you buy a few different types of baskets and like figure out how you would want this to look, prototype it, depending which avenue you're going. So it's like, Mark, I think you made a great point of you need to figure out like what you're selling and why you're selling it before you're approaching the restaurant. So if you're taking this the advertising route, the skill set, I guess the question you asked, like I think the skill set you're going to need is sales. Like, how are you going in and selling this to the restaurants, which restaurants you're going to? And I think with this is like, you're not having to make anything. Like you're just going out and buying product, and it might take you a few no's at different restaurants before you get a yes. If you're listening to this and you already have relationships with restaurants or bars, or maybe you already own a few restaurants and bars, I think it's a great way to just like, again, to my point of like, go to the Dollar Tree tonight, buy a few different baskets, or like see how they're going to work, then maybe like scale up from there. There's really not a lot of barriers to entry to start testing something like this out. And then you could scale it up and trying to get into more restaurants, or trying to, again, develop a product and a need with marketing. So sales and marketing that people don't know they need yet.
Okay. If you're not creating the box or the bin or however, and let's say I am just going to the Dollar Tree and just following with that line of thinking, as like the individual owner, how would I even brand that to sell it to a restaurant? Am I selling a sort of custom service, or am I just selling, we've got the box, we've got the bag check, or am I customizing it? Is that an avenue that you could take as well? So it might be a little bit more, art heavy in terms of skills, but do you think that might be able to sort of mold to kind of your clientele a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think, again, like depending which scenario you take, like 1, 2, 3. So the first being that you are like creating these bins and you're really creating a product that, you're going full blown social media, talking about this product and why people should buy it from you. To that point, Mark, then I think you would go in and it'd be probably a little bit more artsy, or you'd want to maybe focus more on how it could be collapsible. I think at that point, then maybe you are working to develop something, or at least having some sort of basic prototype. Again, I don't think it needs to be some crazy basket, but I do think you would want it logoed then if you're deciding like, hey, I'm going to build this company. I think if you're number 2, as you already own the restaurant and you're deciding to like bring it in as hospitality, it doesn't need to necessarily be branded. I think you'd want it to fit your aesthetic of the restaurant you already have, and maybe figure out how much you want to be spending on these. And again, over time, like, do you see probably a way of measuring it is like, are people staying? Are tips going up? You could measure it through metrics like that if it's having any impact on who's returning. And then the third one being with the advertising A, we'll go with Mark's, where you're putting different names on it. No, I don't think it needs to be branded. I think you could go buy any bin. If you're going with idea number 3, Nicole's, where it's maybe branded, they're pink House of Heidi bins, if you will, then obviously, I need to like pay to get those branded as a business and get those out, asking restaurants if they would take it. So that was a lot of different ways to do that through options 1 through 3 and A and B, but thoughts there.
I think one of my sticking points that I still have is, if the bar or restaurant is just doing this on their own, what place do I have in that scheme at all, in that structure? Let's just say I tell them the idea and they go, no, thanks, we're not interested. And they just do it tomorrow, which is totally, it's their prerogative. So I think that approach is a bit weaker and harder to pull anything out of, at least if you're creating this business. And I think you made a really good point on the first one, maybe having the branding as an option for yourself and creating a prototype of a product of some kind. Even if it does seem more simple, you at least have the ability to sell it to different types of clientele who just maybe they don't they care less about matching the aesthetic. I've been in plenty of places where the aesthetic is not as important, but overhead is all that matters, and it's sort of sometimes it has its own charm and sometimes it's a bad restaurant. I mean, sometimes that happens, but that doesn't mean that as this business owner, you couldn't sell to them as well and say like, we know people like this, and maybe you have some metrics to say like, people that have this have a percentage increase of coming back. You could look into why it's done in other cultures like you saw in Japan. Is there a reason? Is it a respect thing? Like I had no idea about when you mentioned at the very beginning of the pod about the money touching the ground, it loses its value. Yeah. While that you could say that might be just sort of a belief structure, there might be other things like that people might resonate with.
Yeah, I've two additional things, and I think it plays into what you just said. So the first I want to go back to with option 2 as like you're the restaurant bar owner implementing this. So I think with that option and this concept, there is no basket company in my mind, if you will. Like if you take number 2, you are just owning the restaurant and you're like listening to us and you're like, hey, Nicole knows what she's talking about. Like, let's try this.
Sure.
Let's see what happens. So just wanted to clarify that. And then the other thing I think you just touched on, a really important part I wanted to mention too, is like, not only does this idea, I think, add like a level of like, it made me, like I said, feel taken care of, or like, oh, they're caring about my belongings when I went, and in terms of like maybe feeling more upscale, even if it was or no wasn't. I do think what you just said about being like aware of other cultures and other people's beliefs. And I did do like a very quick Google deep dive on this. Like it is not just something in Japan or Asian cultures, but it is around the world. Like there's some South American and there were a few in Africa as well. And actually, Mark, when I was looking, it said Ireland too. So to go back to our Irish episode, I don't know, like
the country of Ireland.
Right. You'll have to like go back and check that out. But I do just think it is probably something a little bit more that people are used to in other places. And that's why throughout the episode, I've been kind of careful to say like, at least in the Midwest, this does not happen.
Sure.
Again, have traveled to other major cities, haven't seen a lot of it. I'm sure it does exist in places. So would love to hear listener feedback on this as well. And if anybody does practice this, I know I've seen women with like very high handbag values, like that will sit courtside. They'll have pictures of like, they'll put it on their shoes so that the bags don't touch the floor. So that's like just kind of a little play on things I've seen in the media from that. But I do think different people probably have these beliefs that if you own the restaurant, I think it makes you feel like you're taken care of and that people are paying attention to what you might be bringing into the restaurant.
At the very least, it's definitely a step up in terms of courtesy. So I'm not going to, I have no problem with that part in saying like people would definitely appreciate this. I think the biggest problem just goes, how do I make money on that concept? And how do I sell that?
$1 million? How do you make $1 million on this?
Maybe I got to sell a million. Maybe I got to sell 1 million boxes. I got to get under 1 million seats.
A million. That's a lot of boxes.
That's a lot of boxes. And so, I'm not like it, and it feels like the cost could be low to get into this, and you could do it based on orders and things. You could have your prototype, which would be relatively inexpensive to create. So I think the barrier to entry is very low, was kind of why I asked you about the skills earlier. It's something I would love at a bar. I'm sure my friends would love at a bar, and I think it would be very helpful because you're almost utilizing the most amount of space in a place that doesn't have any space.
Right.
So if, like the only place in a bar that's unused is the spot under the chair.
Under the chair. Like, yes, use the space. So I like to kind of sum this up as well. I agree with you. Like, I think we've talked a little bit, like, I don't know that this isn't $1 million idea. I do think that this is a really cool concept, though, that as we've talked about, there's so many different ways you could take this and bring it into restaurants or to bars. And I think from there, maybe pivot into a larger business model as well. So whether or not you can figure out how to make $1 million from this idea, I think it does lead into a great concept overall. I think hopefully our listeners, you guys are going to take something and tell Mark and I what we maybe missed, or make this concept into a reality so that I can come and use it and visit your bar or restaurant with my purse and belongings and bring us on your yacht. And we'd love to be able to put my purse in a box on your yacht I don't know.
To the audience, I'll give you two options. One, you can put a bar on your yacht when you make all this money, and you can put the bins underneath or the boxes, however you want to do it. And the other option I'll give you is you can make the boat out of the material that you make the bins out of. I would love a yacht-sized
bin. And
Mark
idea. And I would, we'd like to come see it, maybe determine if we're going to get on the boat. But yeah, we'll be there. We'll come
I'll definitely get on the bin yacht, okay?
Yacht. Okay.
That's all I got to say. So those are your two options. You let us know. We'll be there.
We'll see ya on your bin yacht.
Cheers on the bin
Cheers.
yacht. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on House Business.
Hey, now feels like a great time to mention that this podcast is produced by My4 Creative.
Couldn't think of a better time than now.
They work with businesses and organizations on all their video marketing needs, and they make it a super simple process.
I hear they're doing podcasts now. Is that true?
It is. New this year, they are offering podcast production, which is super exciting.
And believe me when I say, they make you look and sound your absolute best.
We look awesome. Learn more at my4creative.com. My4 Creative, video production, simplified. Now, back to business. So I received feedback once again on, I think, our most popular episode. What do you think it's going to be?
QR Dead.
QR Dead. So I got some feedback on QR Dead. I was actually on the golf course. And like I've said, I'm going to give a shout out to the episode, The Right Club, because I mentioned in there that so many business conversations are had on the golf course. And that is where we talked house business and the idea for QR Dead. So just 2 episode drops there you should listen to if you haven't yet. Yes. But anyways, in the episode QR Dead, the feedback that was given to me was that we were thinking of this the wrong way and that it actually could be a product that is, I think it'd have to have a different name. I'm just going to start with saying that. But advertised and sold to new moms and dads as a product where like you are each year submitting videos or like so many photos, whatever you would subscribe to, of your child's life that you would want to someday be commemorated. So hopefully, obviously the hope is always that your child is going to outlive you, but kind of starting with birth, that you are building like this reservoir of content that someday is going to like stand the test of time. And when they turn into adult or like when they have kids of their own, they're going to have kind of this story of themselves that they can start adding content to as well. So the spin on it was not so much about like leaning into the QR debt or the death portion, but really creating a legacy through like, hey, start the legacy by storytelling and starting like from being an infant on up. So I think a huge spin on the episode, but I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept and actually one that I already do with my kids. So thoughts there, Mark?
Yeah, just kind of, it's, it sounds like a take on the virtual scrapbooking concept. Yeah. I'm sure that is out there. It's a fair take. I think I still would hold true to the original idea because I've never seen that, or it's been, there was a lot more to explore there, whereas I think virtual scrapbooks are a lot more common. And you could argue that how people use Facebook and Instagram and other social media is similar to that of a virtual scrapbook in a way. Personally, I think I'd hold true to the original idea. And I think it's, while like we mentioned way back then, a bit more of an uncomfortable subject, I think that there is more avenue for somebody to kind of come in with your idea, kind of actually make it an actual functioning business. Whereas competing in the virtual scrapbooking world could be a bit oversaturated and already something that is out there and available.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because I think part of the pitch that I had was that, the business of death is not really looked at in a different way. And so it was really kind of leaning into that more than the scrapbook being maybe oversaturated in the market. So that's a good rebuttal. And it was really good feedback. As our listeners know, we love feedback. So thank you for that. The other feedback I got was we had a listener tell me how much they enjoy that I talk about spritz, Aperol spritz variety and drinking it. And so I just want that listener, if you're watching on YouTube, to know I'm drinking one right now. So cheers.
She is the spritz queen. That's
cheers
what they call
to spritz.
Cheers to spritz. Shout out spritz.
Shout out Aperol. We are still waiting on, I I would be like
sponsorship.
Thrilled if Aperol us.
I'll take a sticker. I don't even need a whole thing. I'll just take a sticker.
Yeah. My background turns from pink to orange. Like, I'd be willing to do that for Aperol.
I did have one small little compliment that we had gotten.
Okay.
I got a small compliment on how our fun little names that we've been doing. And I think I agree with that we've been getting kind of a little bit better with our creative juices and our naming conventions. So
good.
Kudos to you.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you, listener.
I've always had it. That the naming stuff was always really, really hard for me. So I've gotten a little bit better. And
it's great when we're like mid-episode and I'm like, what did I name this product?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I did have someone ask me how much we prepare for these. And it is very real that we both hear the name for the very first time as the other one says it. So if you are watching us on YouTube, oftentimes you can see our reaction and you can sometimes see that I think like the wheels spinning. We might even be discussing the next topic, but we're still trying to figure out like where the conversation is going to go. Also, the pitches, like we do not know I never know what Mark is going to pitch until we're here live with you guys, the listener. So I think it's fun.
I never know what corner of the world you're going to pull your idea from, and it's from everywhere. That's what I found out.
It is always also like just a little daunting trying to think of some of the ideas sometimes. So listeners, please continue to submit them because we'd love to keep hearing fresh ideas that don't maybe necessarily come from me and Mark. And we'd love to debate them and let you know like how you can maybe make it come to life or what we think of it. So as always, you can watch us on YouTube. You know, we both like have faces, not just for radio, for YouTube. So you can see this live. On YouTube. I just had to. You can also find us on Spotify. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts. And we are on Instagram, House Business Podcast. So please like, comment, share, send us a DM. We'd love to hear from you.
This right here feel like money. This right here feel like money. Ooh, money moves.